Sri Gurubhyo Namaha, Sri Paramagurubhyo Namaha, Srimad Ananda Tirtha Bhagavad Padacharya Gurubhyo Namaha, Sri Raghavendra Tirtha Gurubhyo Namaha. I am pleased to deliver this lecture on Bhagavadgita, Theory and Practice of Management, a Contemporary Profile, under the auspices of National Institute of Vedic Science, and I compliment all the scholars and the organizers connected with this event for this new initiative of bringing out the science foundations of Vedic knowledge and wisdom. We all know that India has a rich heritage of knowledge and wisdom. Unfortunately, in the modern times, it is not being recognized very much because of the obsession and excessive influence of the Western thoughts of philosophy and science. Whereas in ancient times, at least 200 years ago, we were very appreciative and commending the wisdom and the knowledge foundations of the Bharata Desha. The sources of knowledge that are there for the foundations of wisdom and knowledge are Vedas, Upanishads, Puranas, Smritis, including Bhagavadgita. We have been told for several centuries that our resource base for the knowledge heritage is not profound, is full of mythologies, is full of myths, and therefore is not respectable. In fact, it was the education policy of Macaulay that ruined our pride for our knowledge heritage. It is well known that Macaulay gave a lecture in the British Parliament. It is documented to say that he travelled left and right of the Indian land, and he discovered that there is so much of pride for the Indian knowledge heritage that people cannot be subjugated. We cannot rule the Indian state as a nation unless we remove this pride for heritage from the Indian people. He gave a very fiery speech in the British Parliament to say that the Indian pride for heritage, knowledge, and their discipline has to be ruined. And this is how he introduced the English language, education, and we all were carried away by the supremacy of the British way of administration and governance. And gradually, schools and colleges started studying only the British history and kings and emperors of the British Empire. And our ancient rishis, gurus, who were much greater scientists than the modern science scholars, or who had made significant contributions to the fields of knowledge and metaphysical knowledge and wisdom, were asked to be ignored. They were sidelined because by constantly telling that Indian knowledge system is very inferior. In fact, it is documented that in the British English language dictionaries, Webster Dictionary, Oxford dictionaries, it is very clearly stated that they have created these dictionaries of English and local languages to facilitate the Christian missionaries to spread the feeling that Puranas, Vedas and Itihasas of Indian heritage are myths, are mythologies. The word mythology also was created to create disbelief and remove our faith and pride for our heritage. But anyway, 200 years of British supremacy, and prior to that, the Muslim supremacy has taken away the pride for our heritage considerably. We first lost interest in Sanskrit and started losing respect and adoration for our ancient sources of wisdom and knowledge. That is why Vedas became confined only to the rituals of the traditional nature, and we never thought that Vedas have a profound foundations of knowledge, of science and modern subjects like physics, chemistry, psychology, social sciences and other disciplines of everyday life. Now it is time for us to resurrect this wrong notion about our knowledge heritage and create a pride for our own knowledge heritage. Not only the pride for heritage, but bring out the relevance of the wisdom contained in the traditional knowledge systems for modern contemporary life. And small efforts are being made in this direction by various institutions, and this initiative of the National Institute of Vedic Science is indeed commendable. I would like to express my gratitude and obeisance to His Holiness Sri Vijnanananda Tirtharu, who was responsible for the launching of this institute. I recall whenever I used to meet him, he would always quote a number of Western scholars, criticize them and bring out the greatness of the Indian cultural and knowledge heritage. He was a voracious reader and had a feel of both the spiritual world and the modern world. I used to spend hours together with Sri Vijnanananda Tirtharu. I would say in a modest way that the establishment of the National Institute of Vedic Science was the result of these long series of discussions with me and many others. He launched it and entrusted it to his lieutenant son, Sri Lakshmi Narayanacharya, and now he and Sri Subhash Kakhandki are conducting various activities of great relevance. They are organizing a number of conferences on Vedic sciences and bringing out both the modern scientists and the traditional scholars to bring home the point that Vedic science has got great relevance even for contemporary society. I would not deal in greater detail about the various conferences. Now we are glad that the Institute under the Chancellorship of Sri Shastriji has joined hands with the National Institute of Vedic Science to pursue this objective in a very effective manner. I would like to compliment Sri Shastriji also for this initiative. I recall when I was Chancellor of Sanskrit University in Tirupati, I had taken the initiative of organizing an exhibition called Sanskrit Science Exhibition, who had showcased more than 200 panels, bringing out the science wisdom that existed in our Vedic literature. We have demonstrated as to how the so-called Pythagoras theorem was not the Pythagoras theorem, but it is the Baudhayana theorem. Baudhayana Rishi had spelt out similar theorem several centuries prior to Pythagoras. Similarly, the conception that there is blood circulation is attributed to a British scientist, Neil Harvey, who existed some centuries, some decades ago. Whereas the word Hridaya, used in the Vedic literature, in the traditional literature, in the Ayurvedic literature, clearly brings out that the ancient rishis were aware of the blood circulation. Hridaya. Hru means harati. That means it sucks the blood from the different parts of the body, and da means it purifies it and gives it ayagatav. That means it makes it go to the different parts of the body. Thus the blood circulation conception was known in the ancient times. And in our Sanskrit science exhibition, we had demonstrated as to how the ancient rishis had spelt out knowledge about the existence of water underground, locating the water sources. They had known about the different chemical and the physical properties of the plants and the trees. The whole botany science was very well known. And it is amazing that they had calculated the distance between the earth and the moon very correctly, even in those days. Thus, in short, the wisdom of science and knowledge, and of course, we are aware that the contribution of India to mathematics, Bharatadesha to mathematics, particularly the conception of zero and the decimal value system, are profound, and they have revolutionized the entire knowledge system in mathematics. Unfortunately, we have not received the due recognition and credit for these things because of the inflow of the foreign visitors, the foreign travelers and the attackers who invaded India, invaders of India, and took away our sources of knowledge. In fact, it is believed that a number of source materials of our knowledge heritage exist in Germany and France. And I am aware that when I was Chancellor of Sanskrit University, the Indira Gandhi Institute of Science and Arts, under the leadership of Kapila Vachhayan, had acquired a number of basic foundational manuscripts of science from the German library, and there was a big function to transfer those copies of the manuscripts to India. Anyway, the short point is that we had very rich foundation of science. We had known not only physical sciences, but also the social sciences. The Kautilya's Arthashastra of 6th or 7th century BC is a profound treatise on human relationships. The Manusmriti is the greatest treatise on the human behavior, and the Upanishads are very profound treatises on human relations, and a number of tenets of wisdom that are contained in them, if interpreted in the modern jargons, will tell us as to how profound they were. For instance, the socialistic principles of social science were contained in the Ishavasya Upanishad, which says that Ishavasya idam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bhunjithaha magradha kasyas vidhanam. The very first rik of the Ishavasya Upanishad says that all the resources of the world belong to the Supreme Lord. They don't belong to anybody. The ownership rights of resources was negated It is the highest form of socialism. Not even in Marx or Lenin or Stalin, none of them went to the extent of saying that the resources do not belong to any individual. Resources belong to not the state, but to the Paramatma, to the Lord. And therefore, you should only appropriate only that portion which is legitimate to you. Ishavashamidam sarvam etkincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bhunjitaha. The word tyaktena is interpreted as dattena. Whatever resources he made available to you for human consumption, for human advantage, only you must use that, not that. You must not accumulate. So the whole capitalism is negated in this social order. Tena tyaktena bhunjitaha magradha kasyasvidhanam. And then don't take anybody else's wealth or asset or income for your benefit. All things belong to the Lord. And then the second rik stated that kurvanneveha karmani jijivishet satagum samaha evam tui nanyatetosti na karma lipyate re. The second rik gave emphasis on the performance of duty, which is going to be the basic message, basic sermon of Bhagavadgita. You must keep on doing your prescribed functions without any exception of expectation of rewards, and without as a service to God, and without a feeling that you are independent worker. Swatantra kartatva abhimana rahitya. Kurvanneveha karmane. If you want to live 100 years, you must perform your duty meticulously. Thus, in short, what I want to say is the knowledge heritage of Bharata Desha is profound, and we have to make effort to resurrect that knowledge basis to the modern world and show its relevance and change the whole social, political, economic and psychological order of the present society, so that we realize better peace, harmony and bliss in our world. Now, Vedas are supposed to have three types of meanings. Vedas, Upanishads, Smritis, Puranas, they are all related sources of knowledge. It is one of the statements of the Acharyas. It is stated clearly, Itihasa Purana Abhyam Vedam Samupabrihayet. We must interpret the meanings of the Vedas with the help of the Itihasa and the Puranas. So Itihasa as Ramayana, Mahabharata and all such other Itihasas are not meant to tell you the stories of kings, but they are meant to provide to you certain spiritual messages, adhyatmic messages of life. And unless we recognize this dimension, we will not be able to appreciate the greatness, the profoundness of our basic sources of knowledge, which we have lost, and we have to resurrect and interpret them in the modern jargons. And the first time when the entire Vedas were interpreted in three dimensions, Adi Bhautika, Adi Daivika and Adhyatmika. This is what Madhvacharya stated first, that we must have the Adhyatmic interpretation of the Vedas. And then it's only when Adhyatmic interpretations are taken that we get a better feel of the knowledge system. To tell you very briefly as to how these three interpretations differ, Adhyatmika, Adidaivika and Adibhautika. Before that, I should mention very clearly that all the three great Acharyas, who are Vaidika Acharyas, Adi Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya, have done yeoman service in preserving the Vedic knowledge system. Otherwise, if Bauddha influence was continuing, the Vedas would have been lost totally. Vedic texts were lost, and Vedas knowledge was lost. Vedic rituals were lost. Buddha was also supposed to be incarnation of Paramatma, but he did it for the jnanis and the different purpose. And his method of life for every day, his emphasis on morality, on fundamentals of values is profound, is good. That is why it spread everywhere in the world, in the eastern and the oriental areas. But his negation of the Vedic source of knowledge was something dangerous, and it is the birth, the avatara of Adi Shankaracharya that kept us alive with the Vedic wisdom and the Vedic knowledge. I would say, I would not hesitate to say that if Shankaracharya had not been born, Vedic wisdom, Vedic knowledge would not have been available to us. It would have been totally extinct. He did tremendous effort to fight with the Bauddhas, Jainas, and other schools of thought and establish the supremacy of Vedic knowledge and the rituals. And his commentaries on Brahma Sutras, on Bhagavadgita, on Upanishads, on Puranas have really provided the basic foundations of the knowledge system. Then came Ramanujacharya. By that time, the Vedic culture and Vedic knowledge system had gained ground again. But Ramanujacharya resurrected it further and established the supremacy of Lord Vishnu and gave the philosophy of life which is useful for our everyday purpose. And then came Madhvacharya, who is supposed to have further enriched the Vedic knowledge system and written commentary on Rigbhashya, on Upanishads, on Brahma Sutras, on Bhagavad Gita, and his literature is vast in giving the interpretations of the Vedas in all the three dimensions. To give you a brief idea about what is the difference between Adi Bhautika, Adi Daivika, and Adhyatmika, I will give you one example. Take Agni, for instance, because Agni Mile Purohitam is the first rig in Rigveda. And Agni can be interpreted to mean fire. Fire as we see every day. Fire. Fire gives us light, gives us heat, gives us lot of, the fire of sun gives us life. And so fire is the very basic source for our life and existence. That is why the first rig of Rigveda is Agni Sukta, Agni Mile, profound. Prayers for Agni. Agni in different dimensions. If Prithvi, Ap, Tejas, Vayu, Akasha, all these are 5 elements of Panchamahabhutas, but Agni is supposed to exist in all the Panchamahabhutas. And in a way, it is a source of life. Prana Agni, then Vayu has got Agni. Everywhere Agni is there. Now Agni as a fire, as a fire, burning fire, is the Adi Bhautika interpretation of the word Agni. Now Adi Daivika interpretation is Agni Devata. It is Madhvacharya who introduced the conception that every Jada Padartha, every Panchamahabhutas, Sattva, Rajas, Tamo Gunas have all got commanding deities. Every element is commanding deities. It's almost like a multi-god system of multi-governance system, multi-ministry system. President of the country is the supremo authority and Paramatma is the supreme authority. But he has a number of ministers dealing with different portfolios, and these are the different gods and sub-gods. Though people criticize that Hinduism is riddled with multiplicity of gods, but it has a purpose. Not only purpose, it has got a special meaning. that all these gods are commanding deities of different entities in life. Agni has got a god, Vayu has got a god, water has got a god, river has got a god, tree has got a god. All these are commanding deities, and they have a purpose. By saying that every item in life has a commanding deity, we are bringing in a sense of respect for this. It's almost like environmental management. You cannot destroy rivers. And in fact, in the ancient literature, it is said that you cannot spit in the river, you cannot urinate in the river, you cannot throw dusts in the river, you cannot leave the sewage of the city in the river. No, that is crime, that is sin. The Papa and Punya were conceived to make people behave in a very meaningful manner, in a very purposeful manner. And that's why the conception of the commanding deities was very useful. So Agni has got Agni Devata, Vayu has got Vayu Devata, river up has got Up Devata, Prithvi has got Prithvi Devata. Maybe female or male Devatas, but they all are Devatas. And once we say Devatas, they are respectable. They cannot be ignored. They cannot be condemned. We have to show respect. Therefore, you are not supposed to spit in the river. You are not supposed to urinate in the river. And Vayu Devata, Vriksha Devata. Similarly, you are not supposed to cut the trees. If you cut the trees, you hurt the Devata of the commanding deity of the Vriksha. In that sense, the multi-god system has got a purpose in facilitating an orderly life, an extremely harmonious life between man, nature, and divinity. And then Adhyatmic interpretation means that Devata is also under the command of the Supreme Lord. We Vaishnavas say that Supreme Lord is Vishnu. Others say that Shiva is the Supreme Lord. Shiva, Ishvara, Brahma, and Vishnu are the three entities who command this world. And we can consider their roles in the appropriate manner. But since I am a Vaishnava, I am saying that Vishnu is the Supreme Lord. Vishnu is the Supreme Lord who gives this ability to Agni Devata to burn, to have his property. He commands the Agni Devata, and Agni Devata in turn gives the ability to Agni to create fire, to create light, to create burning the abilities and so on. In fact, it is stated in one of the Upanishads that when in Kenopanishad there is a story comes that when there was Yaksha, Paramatma gave to test the ahankara of the Devatas. When there was a fight between the Devatas and the Asuras, Devatas earned the victory. But they thought they got it out of their own abilities. No, they had got it out of the command of out of the grace of Paramatma. They forgot about it. Once Yaksha came in the skies and he wanted to test the ahankara of the gods. And they thought, who is this Yaksha? So he sent Vayu and Agni. Vayu said that I can, first they sent Agni. And Agni said, I can burn everything. Then Yaksha got a blade of grass in front of him and said, you burn it. By that time, he had taken away the ability of Agni Devata to burn. And since he was under the command of the Paramatma and he had forgotten about it, that capability of Agni was vanished. Agni Devata had vanished. So he did not burn even a blade of grass. And similarly, when Vayu went, Agni came back and said that I could not find out who the Yaksha is. And when Vayu came, Vayu went and said, you know, I am Vayu, I can blow off anything. And then Yaksha kept a small blade of glass and then you blow it off. Vayu's capability was withdrawn by Paramatma, who controls everyone, and Vayu could not blow that small blade of grass. So he returned to say that I also could not recognize who it was, because they were all bloated with the ahankara. And so finally Indra himself came, and then Yaksha disappeared, and then Parvati tells him that this was Paramatma himself. That is how the Kenopanishad tells us. So the short point is that Agni Devata and Agnyantargata Paramatma, Agnyantargata Vishnu. Agni Devata and Agnyantargata Paramatma, Vishnu. That is why Adi Bhautika, Adi Daivika and Adhyatmika. So Madhvacharya gave all the three interpretations. In Sumadhva Vijaya it comes, Tyarthatam Srutichu Vittadachartham Bharatam Nanu Shatartham Apisyat Vaishnavam Padasahasratayam Hi. When somebody asked him how many meanings are there to all these sources of knowledge, Madhvacharya is supposed to have said that there are 3 meanings to Vedas, 10 meanings to Mahabharata, and 1,000 meanings for each name of Paramatma. And we may not be able to discover those 10 meanings or 100 meanings today, not even clearly the 3 meanings of the Vedas. But he clearly spelt out the theory of deriving different meanings for the different sources of knowledge. And so, in short, Adi Bhautika, Adi Daivika and Adhyatmika interpretations are very important. The fact that Vedas have got Adhyatmic interpretation has received great commendation from a great scholar, Vedic scholar called Kapali Shastri. Kapali Shastri is the disciple of Aurobindo. And he writes, while writing about the Vedic knowledge system, that it was Madhvacharya who gave to us the Adhyatmic interpretation. I will read from his Rigbhashya Bhumika. He has written a very profound scholarly commentary on Vedas called Siddhanjana. And this is the commentary on the Rig Veda, the only recent commentary on Vedas in Sanskrit. And we are appreciative of the initiatives being taken by our friend Dr. R.L. Kashyap through his Sakshi Institute to bring out the Vedic translations into English of Vedas. And it is he who has brought out his book on Kapali Shastri's Rig Veda Sanhita, and I was pleased to read that and benefit from it. And there he writes, I will read out for the benefit of our listeners, that Kapali Shastri, the disciple of Aurobindo, the most celebrated Indologist and Vedic scholar of modern times, that he appreciates the Adhyatmic interpretation of the Vedas. Evamapi na kopi asit Vedanam Adhyatma Paratva Pakshasya Ujjivanaya Pravruttaha iti na shakyam vaditum Acharya Madhva Grantheshu Jagratsu yat Sayanat Kinchit Purvam Anandatirtha Acharyaha Ringmantra Tatparya Parigrahasya Prakaropa Darshanaya Ruksanhitaya Prathama Mandaliyani Chatvarinushat Suktani Vyachakhyau Vaidika Dharmacharane Karmanushtanasya Avasyakataya Karmapara Vyakhyanam Mantranam Sadhu iti Karma Karanameva Mantranam Mukhyam Tatparyamiti Matam Asadhu iti va Mantra Madhva Acharyaha Manyate Mantranam Adhyatmaparo Arthaha Mukhyaha Sarvesham Vedanam Vishnupada Prapti Rupa Parama Purusharthe Tatparyam iti cha प्रतिपादयति आचार्यः लघु विस्तरं माध्व रघुभाष्यं विरलान् मध्व संप्रदाय पंडितान् अंतरा प्रायशः वेद विचारिणाम् अविदितमेव तादृशम् असमग्रमपि अस्त्येव वेदभाष्यम् इति तदनुसारिणा महानुभावेन श्री राघवेन्द्र स्वामिना योगीन्द्रेण आचार्यस्य भाष्यम् अनुसृत्य आशयान् विशदयन्ति मंत्रार्थमंजरी नाम व्याख्या निबद्धा. And then ultimately he says, अथ ऋग्व्याख्या प्रकार प्रदर्शनाय मंत्रार्थमंजरी वाक्यानि उपयुज्य अग्निमेळे इत्यर्चः अर्थं संक्षेपेण उदाहरामः. So he appreciates the Adhyatmic interpretation of Vedas. Why I am mentioning all this, is to bring home the point that when we say that Bhagavadgita is a treatise on management, we should not dismiss it. We should not say that it is not very appropriate, because Vedas themselves have got three interpretations: Adhidaivika, Adhibhautika, Adhidaivika, and Adhyatmika. And in the Adhyatmika interpretation, they deal with the manner in which the individual can adopt ways and means of realizing Vishnu. And therefore, I will not again translate this portion of Sanskrit, because it is very simple Sanskrit and very well stated, that before Sayana, everybody thought that there was no Adhyatmic interpretation. Sayana gave more of Adhibhautika interpretation, whereas Madhvacharya had given Adhibhautika, Adhidaivika and Adhyatmika interpretations. So it's not necessary to think that Vedas tell only karma and not any Adhyatma tattvas. See, Bhagavad-gita is a treatise on Moksha Shastra. It gives profound knowledge about Paramatma, and also it gives knowledge about the karmas. That's why in Bhagavad-gita itself, it said that the Traigunya Vishaya Vedaha Nistraigunya Bhavarjuna. Traigunya Vishaya Vedaha. Rayaru, in the commentary on Bhagavad-gita, Gita Artha Sangraha, says very clearly that Vedas appear to be concerned with Traigunyas. Traigunyas are Sattva, Rajas, Tamo Gunas. Sattva, Rajas, Tamo Gunas and their effects on karma. Sattva Guna, Rajas, Tamo Guna karmas, they are dealing with only Karma Kanda. No, they deal with Karma Kanda and also Nistraigunya Bhavarjuna. Nirdvandvo, Nitya Sattvastho, Niryoga Kshema Atmavan. So you can also deal with the Vedas as the treatises which tell you about the ways and means of getting rid of the karma lepas. So don't think that Vedas tell you only as karmas, but they are also dealing with the non-karma, adhyatmic methods of getting knowledge about Paramatma and getting liberated from Sattva-guna, Rajoguna, Tamoguna, and getting becoming Gunatita, and then ultimately going with the grace of Paramatma to the realization of the ultimate bliss. So when we treat Bhagavad-gita as a treatise on Moksha Shastra, all these processes are involved. Similarly, in Atharvana Upanishad, we get clear indication as to how the same source of knowledge give you Paravidya and Aparavidya. Atha parayaya tadaksharam adhigamyate. Atha apara Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Shiksha, Kalpa, Nirukta, Vyakarana, Chandas. They are all first stated to be Aparavidya. Aparavidya means they are concerned with the worldly life. They are concerned with karmas. They are concerned with the Jada Prakriti. But they, when interpreted in a proper way, they become also source of knowledge about Paramatma. So athapara yaya tad aksharam adhigamyate. They also become paravidya when they tell us the meanings about the akshara. Akshara means the nacharahita, sarvatantra swatantra, sarvaguna paripurna, paramatma. Aksharam yaya tad aksharam adhigamyate. So the Atharvana Upanishad clearly says that the same source of knowledge could deal with the karma kanda and also the adhyatmika kanda. So therefore, don't think that only karmas are the messages of Vedas, but they also tell you as to how karma lepa can be removed. That's why in Raghavendra Swamigalu, on interpreting that sloka, Traigunya Vishaya Vedaha Nistraigunyo Bhavarjuna. Traigunya Vishaya Vedaha. First interpretation is, it appears that apatataha Vedas are giving knowledge about Traigunyas. Traigunyas are karmas, transformations of sattva, rajas, tamo gunas, the effects of sattva guna, rajoguna, tamo guna. They are all concerned with the respective karmas. And it appears that they are the final Vishayas of Vedas. No. So then in the second part he tells Arjuna to be Nistraigunya, to be away from the Traigunya. It appears as if he tells him to be away from the Vedic knowledge. If Vedas have got Traigunya as the Vishayas, how can he preach Arjuna to be away from the Traigunya Vedas? No, that will not be appropriate. That's why that cannot be regarded as appropriate. That's why Rayaru gives the interpretation of this sloka. That's why I depend upon the Rayaru's commentaries, which are very succinct, very authentic, very forceful, and based upon the Vyakarana, based upon the logic, and very relevant for everyday life. That's why in my lectures, I tend to quote Raghavendra Swamigalu commentaries, Gitartha Sangraha. Though there are many commentaries on Bhagavadgita, Shankara Bhashya is there, Ramanuja Bhashya is there, and Madhva Bhashya is there. Tikarayaru has written the Prameya Deepika and all these. But I find that referring to the Gitartha Sangraha of Rayaru beats all these sources of knowledge in terms of giving us the messages for our everyday life. And therefore, he says, Traigunya Vishaya Vedaha, Traigunyameva Visham, Tadyapayanti iti Traigunya Vishayaha. See the profundity of Vyakarana given by the Rayaru. Traigunyameva Visham, Tadyapayanti iti. Traigunya, karma, is almost like Visha. Because Traigunya, if we pursue only the path of karma, it will not give us the modalities or the methodology of moving to the status of Trigunati Tattva and Paramatma Anugraha and Moksha. That will not give us. We have to keep ourselves away from all the three gunas also. Sattva-guna, Rajoguna, Tamoguna. All of them create bandhas. In Bhagavad Gita itself is stated that all these sources are bandhakas. Therefore, we have to keep away from these bandhakas. So, Traigunya is karma. Karma is Visha. Why? It creates lepas. Karma lepas means the kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsara. When these counter effects, these negative effects come on us as a result of performance of karma, then we cannot get rid of the trigunas, and we get first into the फंस जाते हैं, that triguna daldal में फंस जाते हैं, like that. So we have to be away from this daldal, means we have to find out the ways and means of getting rid of the Traigunyas. Traigunyameva Visham Tadyapayanti iti Traigunya Vishayaha. Rayaru gives a very profound meaning of this sloka and tells us that we should use the same source of knowledge for Adhyatmic interpretation and get away from the karma lepas. That is how the Vedic interpretation has to be very profoundly done, and that is why we need all the three acharyas to tell us the different meanings of the Vedas, to ultimately use them for realizing the final blissful state. Ultimately, our goal is to be happy, and we want to reach the blissful state. The final blissful state of moksha is something which is the goal of all life. And in terms of the Bhagavadgita, as a treatise of Moksha Shastra, we have to get rid of the karma lepas. But coming to the modern interpretation of Bhagavad-Gita, Bhagavad-Gita, as we know, was a sermon given by Lord Krishna to Arjuna, and through Arjuna to all of us on the occasion of Mahabharata Yuddha. On the eve of the Yuddha, when everyone had blown the conch shells, Arjuna gives up his Gandiva Dhanus and says that he will not fight. We'll come to that chapter-wise methodology, chapter-wise treatment of the contents of Bhagavad Gita shortly, but I am only in the introductory lecture today, and I want to bring out the point that Bhagavad Gita can be a treatise on management as per the traditional wisdom and knowledge system. And therefore, he says that we should not allow the lepas of karma. Karma lepa is an interesting term. We should not take karma lepa as something as Johnson paint applying to us or some sticking substance coming to us. They are all the adverse effects of performance of karma. Karmas, when we perform, we get into kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsara. These are the lepas. When we do a karma, we have developed the craze for doing more. When we get the tendency to realize some benefits out of the karma, we want to get more of the benefits. Therefore, the kama. Then krodha. If we do not fulfill certain objects out of that kama, we get angry. Even otherwise, anger is part of our system. That's why Krishna tells Arjuna, kama esha, krodha esha, rajoguna samudbhavaha, mahachano mahapapma, vidyaina mihaverinam. You consider him as the enemy. We'll come to that in greater detail in due course of time. But karma lepas means kama, krodha. Then lobha, craze for more and more. When we realize some objective out of our karmas, we want to get more of it. Karma, kama, krodha, lobha, moha. And then we think that we did it ourselves, and we get into some sort of vanity, and we start boasting about it and gloating about it. And the result is that we get into suboptimal level of efficiency. When we get into the status of being gloating on our karmas, we do not realize that we are out of control. We start behaving in an unethical manner, in an irrational manner, and we start forgetting about God and forgetting about the upakara done by others. So, lobha, moha, mada, we get vanity that we did it, and we start treating others in a very ill manner. We start overpowering others, mada, matsara, and we get into the envy, jealousy, that others have not done it and I have done it more, or you want to get more of the same rewards because others are much. If somebody else has got 2 cars, you would like to get 2 cars. Matsarya, jealousy, mada, matsarya. All these are the lepas, because when we start getting these attitudes in life, we become totally subsumed or consumed or obsessed by the vicious circle of karma and karma lepas and karma lepas. We never get out of the karma lepas. Therefore, karma lepa has to be eliminated, and for doing that, we must perform in such a way that we do not get into those karma lepas. That's why Traigunya Vishaya Vedaha, that is Visha. It's almost like poison. You know, poison kills you slowly. Poison may not kill you immediately. So when we get into these karma lepas, we start becoming much and much lesser human beings, lesser rational, lesser ethical, and we start destroying ourselves and destroying others. In Bhagavadgita, Krishna tells us to how we destroy ourselves. He tells very systematically as to how we destroy ourselves. Sangasteshu upajayate, Vishayan indriya, Sangasteshu upajayate, Sangat sanjayate kamaha, Kamat krodho vijayate, Krodhat bhavati sammohaha, Sammoha smriti vibhramaha, Smriti bhramshat buddhinasho, Buddhinashat pranasyati. Thus, we forget about everything. And Bhagavad Gita is a treatise which gives the condensation of all the Upanishads. I am now in the introductory lecture, therefore I will not elaborate on the contents of the different adhyayas and elaboration of different yogas, different modalities of management. But I will tell you as to how Bhagavad Gita gives us the different dimensions of management, conflict resolution, stress management, human relations, human behavior, human psychology. All these dimensions are covered in my lecture on Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavad Gita theory and practice of management. Now, when we say that Bhagavad Gita is a treatise on management, we cannot forget that it is also a profound treatise of adhyatmic knowledge and the knowledge of everyday life contained in the Upanishads. There is a beautiful statement I must end up by telling us as to how in Bhagavad Gita Mahatmya we get into a beautiful sloka which tells us about the greatness of Bhagavad Gita. It runs as follows: Sarvopanishado Gavaha Dogdha Gopalanandanaha Partho Vatsaha Sudhir Bhokta Dugdham Gitamritam Param. Sarvopanishado Gavaha Dogdha Gopalanandanaha Partho Vatsaha Sudhir Bhokta Dugdham Gitamritam Param. It's a beautiful sloka of Bhagavad Gita Mahatmya. If we consider all the Upanishads as cows, Sarvopanishado Gavaha, maybe you can treat all the Upanishads as one cow. And now for the cow, some milkman is required, somebody to milk the cow. And that is Sarvopanishado Gavaha Dogdha Gopalanandanaha. None other than Lord Krishna himself. Gopalanandanaha. Gopala is Vasudeva or Nanda Gopala, and his son. He is the one who gives joy and pleasure to Nanda. Gopalanandanaha. And then who is the calf for this process of milking the cow? Partho Vatsaha. It's a beautiful analogy of saying that Arjuna is the calf. Arjuna is the calf. What does the calf do? We know in the practical world, the calf goes to the cow and hurdles its milk source and eases it by pushing its head on it and eases it. And it takes some milk. And if it takes all the milk, we will not be left with anything. But we push the calf otherwise. That is meant for the public consumption. It's not that the calf should drink the entire milk. It only eases that kettalu, and then it brings out the milk, and then we take the milk from it. So Partho Vatsaha. So he does the job of bringing the milk from the cow, and it's left outside, and we start taking the milk. Then Sudhir Bhokta. Who is the person who enjoys this milk? It is Sudhihi. Very beautiful statement, Sudhihi. Sushtu dhihi yasya saha. Dhihi is buddhir manisha dhishana dhih prajna se mushimatihi. The one who has got good intellect, good mind, the power of reasoning, one who knows the right from the wrong, the good from the bad, evil from the good. So he would be the enjoyer of the milk which comes from the Sudhir Bhokta. And then what is the ultimate available milk out of this? Dugdham Gita Amritam Param. The one which is available as Dugdha is Gita Rupi Amrita. That is the nectar which comes out of this Dugdha. Gita itself is the Amrita which comes, and then that itself is the milk. So that is why the Bhagavadgita is a treatise which gives the essentials of the knowledge and the wisdom contained in the different Upanishads. You know, what are the Upanishads? Upanishads are supposed to be almost the tutorials. Upanishat, Upanishidati. The disciple sits near the Guru and he asks questions. You know, most of the Upanishads are in the form of question-answer sessions. Shat Prasna Upanishad or even other Upanishads, they are very clearly the narrations of a rishi to a sishya. And the questions are asked. Even Bhagavad Gita is a treatise of question and answer. It's almost like tutorial. Arjuna asks the questions sometimes, and sometimes Krishna anticipates the questions and replies to them. And therefore, Arjuna and Krishna are in the form of conversation, and through that they give us a lot of sermons of wisdom relevant for our moksha and relevant also for our everyday life. And so Upanishads are the treatises which gives us the succinct knowledge base of the Vedas. So the Upanishads, they came later after the Vedic system. You know, Vedas are sometimes very profound. Vedic Sanskrit is very profound. And we all believe, all the three Acharyas believe that Vedas, Upanishads, they are all apaurushaya. They are not written by anybody. They have come out of the revelations to the various rishis. And that is why they have pramana. They are apaurushayattvena pramana. If they are written by anybody, the blemishes of the individual may enter the text. Whereas when they are revealed as gods, they are supposed to have come from the four mouths of Chaturmukha Brahmadevaru. All the four Vedas have come from the four mouth Chaturmukha Brahmadevara mouths. So they are all very authentic sources of knowledge. But to get to know the meanings of Vedas from their original language and original sources is difficult. That is why we need the commentaries on Vedas. And that is why Vedavyasa wrote Brahma Sutras to enable us to derive the meanings of the Vedas. And Brahma Sutras have been commented upon by Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya. It appears all the Acharyas have given correct interpretations. I will not here get any prejudgment as to who is superior to the other, but I would only say that they have all contributed to the extension of Vedic knowledge by commenting on the Vedas and writing Brahma Sutras. Brahma Sutras are crisp and cryptic statements on the interpretation of the Vedas. There are 4 adhyayas in Brahma Sutras. As per the Madhva tradition, the first adhyaya is supposed to be Sarva Shabda Samanvaya, and second adhyaya is Sarva Dosha Viduratva, and third adhyaya is Sadhana Adhyaya, and fourth adhyaya is Phaladhyaya. And all the 4 together gives us the interpretations of the Vedas. Maybe there may be differences of interpretations among the 3 acharyas, but they all have emphasized the importance of bhakti, jnana, vairagya. They have all emphasized the supremacy of the Supreme Lord, maybe Shiva or Vishnu, and they have all emphasized the need for adopting the methodology of bhakti, jnana and vairagya to achieve the blissful state of final blissful state of moksha. Maybe the conception of moksha differ in the details of the acharyas, but broad tenor of argumentation that Vedas give us the source of profound knowledge is common to all of them. And bhakti, jnana, vairagya are emphasized by all the acharyas. Now here, so Upanishads are supposed to be the quintessence of Vedic knowledge. Brahma Sutras are meant to enable us the meanings of the Vedas. Brahma Mimamsa Shastra, they are called as Brahma Mimamsa Shastra, and as such, the Brahma Sutras and Upanishads are very useful in understanding. Different Upanishads give us different profound knowledge about the Vedic wisdom. And therefore, to consider Bhagavad-Gita as an ordinary kavya of 700 slokas as a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna would be talking very low about Bhagavad-Gita. We must consider it as the quintessence of Upanishads. We must consider it as a quintessence of profound knowledge of Vedas and the Vedic philosophy of life. Vedas give us not only knowledge about the Paramatma and Jivatma and Jada Padartha, Prithvi, Ap, Tejas, Vayu, Akasha, and science and Vijnana, but also they give us the metaphysical knowledge about the ways and means of achieving the final blissful state. And therefore, Vedas contain physics, science, physical sciences, biology, botany, and they contain wisdom about Prani Shastra, about zoology, about the botany, and about the human resources. And all these are contained in, because they are dealing with both the Bhautika Shastra and also the metaphysical aspect of life. And therefore, we must consider Bhagavad-Gita as a treatise relevant for our life, which brings the quintessence of the Upanishadic knowledge and Vedic knowledge, and also relevant for our everyday life. And this is an introductory lecture giving us the background of our knowledge heritage and the greatness of our knowledge heritage, and also in bringing you to realize that Bhagavad-Gita is a treatise of human behavior and human psychology and human management, in particular managing oneself, and we will deal with these issues to a much greater extent in the subsequent lectures. I will stop here. It is my practice to end all the lectures with the final sloka of Bhagavad Gita. Yatra yogeshwarah krishno, yatra partho dhanurdharaha, tatra sri vijayo bhutihi, dhruvani tirma tirmama. Sri Krishna arpanamastu.